Yemen's horrific civil war just got a lot more complicated. A separatist group that usually fights with the Saudi-led coalition has suddenly opened fire on its own allies, seizing the city of Aden on the southern coast. The so-called Southern Tradition Council has wanted South Yemen to break away from the rest of the country and in the past few days routed government and Saudi-backed forces. Aden is a strategic port city that became the seat of the internationally recognized Yemeni government after Iran-backed Houthi rebels ran it out of the capital, Sana'a. The coalition, including the STC, has been fighting the Houthi rebels, but as Sam Kiley reports, Yemen may now be facing what one group calls a civil war within a civil war.
Yemen Saudi-led coalition being blasted away by its own members. Militia backed by the UAE claiming victory over the government that it had been fighting for, vanquishing the government's allies in Isla, an Islamist militia armed and supported by Saudi Arabia.
We dedicate this victory to the people of the South after we were victorious over the Islah terrorist party.
A spokesman for the Southern Separatists told CNN that they now control the whole of Aden, having defeated the very government they had supported in a 4-year war against Houthi rebels in the north. Saudi and Emirati troops vanished from the streets as the two nations saw their alliance collapse around them on the ground.
Today we achieved a big victory in the capital, Aden, and 10 battalions were defeated. And at night, we took control of the presidential palace.
Saudi Arabia has threatened retaliation against any group that does not cease fire. The separatists told CNN that they would accept a Saudi invitation to talks. But for millions of Yemenis already impoverished by war, this is what their future looks like. Sam Kiley, CNN, Abu Dhabi.
Well, all this is unfolding amid what the United Nations calls the world's worst humanitarian crisis. It says of Yemen's 28 million people, that 24 million are in need of some level of assistance, and more than 10 million are starving. The conflict and the parties involved have made it difficult for aid groups to deliver help to many parts of the war zone. Well, I want to get more perspective on this latest military development. Elena DeJoja is a research fellow with the Washington Institute for Near East Policy. She joins us from Washington. Good to have you with us, Elena. I want to get your perspective on this very complicated war. There are so many parties involved. It's been going since 2015, and now we seem to be seeing this civil war within a civil war where fighters backed by the Saudi coalition seem to be turning on each other.
Yeah, that's right. So the Yemen war can be explained as originally between, two groups, the Houthis and what we refer to as the Saudi-led coalition. But I think it's important to remember that the coalition is not a cohesive group necessarily, but they are all anti-Houthi. So they've come together as, a group to fight the Houthis. And similarly, the Houthis are all anti-coalition, but they themselves are not necessarily cohesive. So what you have now is two groups within the coalition fighting each other. And so that's why the folks at the International Crisis Group called it a civil war within a civil war.
And so the South, of course, was independent from the North until 1990. And now these fighters from the South want independence. Why now?
Well, they've wanted independence for a long time. I think they realized shortly after they unified with the North in 1990 that it was a mistake, and that led to a civil war in 1994. They lost that civil war, and then protests started in 2007 and continued pretty regularly until this war broke out. And so this isn't a new issue. The cast of characters has ebbed and flowed a bit over time, but the Southern separatist issue has been around for 30 years. This is definitely not a new political issue. They're just more powerful now than they used to be.
Right. So largely Saudi Arabia has been responsible for a lot of the battle from the air, and the UAE has been responsible for a lot of the fighting on the ground and training fighters. But the UAE has been withdrawing troops. Why are they doing that? Just explain for us.
Sure. So the drawdown in the UAE has been drawing down in Yemen. I think we should be clear that it's a drawdown and not a withdrawal, and it's specifically a drawdown from the anti-Houthi fight. They've kept many of their forces in the south to support the forces that go against al-Qaeda, and those forces happen to be these southern separatists who are now, turning their attention on the Hadi government. And so the UAE drawdown was meant to be, and in their view, they said an offering, to open up a diplomatic solution with the Houthis. But now, of course, all the attention is on the south.
Is this an unwinnable war? There are so many factions and so many unwilling to concede anything.
Well, I think the influence of outside actors makes it more complicated. So Yemen has always been a complicated place, but Yemenis somehow find a way to sort of work it out. In this particular case, it's possible there will be some sort of talks and some sort of negotiated solution. Wars in Yemen are always a little bit more difficult when you have, or wars anywhere really, when you have outside actors, sending weapons and all sorts of things into the country. Things always get, once you have a war economy, people start making money off the war, and things get harder and harder and harder to solve as more time goes by.
And for the people, the millions of people, 10 million that are starving, what does this development mean for them? Because as I mentioned earlier, the United Nations has called this the world's worst humanitarian crisis.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, this particular conflict is in one city. So, but the folks in Aden are, a lot of them are trapped in their homes. They didn't have access to water or food because there was fighting all around them the last couple of days. So it has been really tough on those people in that city. I was in Aden in June. And, you have bombed out buildings. It's already a city that has seen war. And now over the last couple of days, it's been even worse. And there's, I think, 40 people have been killed. So, yeah, the impact on the civilian population, specifically in this case in Aden, has been serious. And the Doctors Without Borders have been reporting on this. And obviously the UN has been mentioning it as well. It would be great if the fighting, quelled a little bit so that people could get out of their homes and get water and food that they need.
Absolutely. Elena de Loja, always good to get your perspective. Thanks so much for your time today.